Hello everybody, welcome back to another podcast. So Business War and Don't Let Go were released in theaters last weekend. Let's see how those movies did at the box office. Alright, let's get this out of the way first. Both Don't Let Go and Business War, they make the top 10 last weekend. They were both poor performer over the Labor Day weekend, but we'll get to that at the end of the top 10. Alright, so let's jump right in. Coming in at number 1 is Angel Has Fallen. It repeated at the top spot with a 3-day take of 11.8 million, and for the 4-day Labor Day weekend is about 14.8 million. So a little bump there. Drop off is quite low, about 45% from the previous weekend, so it has relatively good hold. Domestic growth so far is around 43 million so far, and it hasn't opened overseas yet, but we'll get those figures later. Let's see how it did overseas. Overseas hasn't opened that wide overseas yet, and the number tallies are not up at Box Office Mojo, but we'll get those numbers later. In terms of the Fallen movies, right now it's currently ranked 3rd because it's only open 2 weeks only. Let's see, London Has Fallen domestic gross is about 62 million, and Angel Has Fallen is taking the same trajectory as London Has Fallen. Both open around 21 million or so the second weekend. Relatively similar amounts. So when it's all said and done, Angel Has Fallen will probably grow somewhere in the like 60 million-ish range or so when it leaves theaters. Since the budget for Angel Has Fallen is only about 40 million or so, it looks like we might see another Fallen sequel sometimes in the future. Alright, moving along to number 2 is Good Boys, the R-rated comedy starring tweens, who's trying to learn the ins and outs of what's necessary to go to this party that they're invited to. So, like I say, R-rated comedy is well reviewed, 79% on the tomato meter, B plus cinema score, so it's okay there. This movie opened better than I projected. I said this movie could probably open somewhere in between 15 to 20 million range. It actually opened to 21 million. And in its 3rd weekend, it pulled in 9.5 million. 3 days and 4 days, it pulled in 12.1. The budget for this movie is 20 million, and thus far it has already grossed over nearly 60 million. Overseas, it pulled in 12 million for a worldwide total of 71 million, and I don't expect huge numbers for this movie overseas. Anything is bonus over there because there's a language barrier. As we said previously, comedies don't usually travel well because there's a cultural differences and a language barrier. So any amount overseas is bonus. Alright, number 3 is the Disney's new take on The Lion King, a more realistic animated version of The Lion King. In the 7th weekend, it pulled in about 6.8 million in the 7th weekend. That's for 3 days, and 4 days they put 9.3 million. Domestic gross so far is 523 million, and overseas 1 billion for a worldwide total about 1.6 billion. Budget's 260, but hey, it's 1.6 billion overseas, so it's a very successful remake for Disney. Number 4 is the new latest Fast and Furious spin-off, Hobbs Shaw. It pulled in 6.4 million of 3 days, and for 4 days it pulled in 8.2 million. Domestic gross is about 159 million, roughly 160 million, and overseas it pulled in 528 million for a worldwide total of 687 million, but just 200 million. But for spin-off, it's doing relatively well since it only has Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham in this movie. The rest of the crew are missing. They might reunite later on down the road for another Fast and Furious movie, but I heard that there might be some friction there among the Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson et al. So who knows, right? But with this spin-off, I assume that they're gonna, for future movies, they're gonna continue with Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham, for the Fast and Furious franchise, and bringing in other people, to make up for the rest of the crew. Alright, number 6 is Ready or Not. It is the dark comedy about a woman who marries into her husband's family, and her husband has this ritual where they hunt the woman, the newlywed, and they have to survive. In this case, a hide and seek game, and they have to survive until morning, right? And there's gruesome blood and guts and all. And this movie pulled in about 5.8 million or 5.9 9 million 3 days, and for 4 days about 7 million 4 days. Domestic gross is about 21 million so far. The budget's only 6 million, so it's doing pretty good for a low budget dark comedy. But then again, I say, dark comedies are hard to sell at the theaters. It has to have the right mix and all. And overseas they put in about 10 million for a worldwide total about 31 million. But hey, budget 6 million, 31 million return so far. It's doing actually pretty good. Number 6 is Overcomer. It's a uplifting, faith-based film, from the people who brought us like a War Room. This movie pulled in about 5.7 million 3 days, and for 4 days it pulled in 7.8 million. Domestic gross is about 21 million so far. Budget again is relatively low, 6 million. Return of 21 million. When it's all said and done, this movie could probably grow somewhere between 35 to 40 million in theaters. Alright, number 7 is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's based on a book. In its 4th weekend, it pulled in about 5 million and 3 days, and for 4 days it is 6.2 million, and domestic gross so far is about 59 million, and additional 26 million from overseas for a worldwide total of 85 million. Budget is 25 million, so it's one of these movies that is thrown in the last days of summer, and it is actually performing well. Number 8 is Spider-Man Far From Home. It actually got a bump for the 3-day holiday weekend, right? Let's see. For 3 days, it put in about 4.3 million. Let's see. And for 4 days, it's actually number 10, 4 days. But, for 4 days, it put in 5.5 million. So, people are catching up to Spider-Man Far From Home. Got a bump for the 3 days, but for 4 days is actually dipped a bit and fell to number 10. Let's see, domestic gross for Spider-Man Far From Home is 386 million, and overseas it pulled in 736 million for a worldwide total of about 1.1 billion. And unfortunately, this is the last Spider-Man movie under the Marvel and Sony collaboration. They're going their separate ways because they couldn't come up with a deal, and we'll see how the franchise will go from here. Will they reboot this story again with a new actor as Spider-Man? We don't know. Maybe there's another one with Tom Holland, and the story will be way different from what it is in Far From Home, where he is plugged into the MCU, the cinematic universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course, we don't know if, and of course, I think we know, how well it will perform, the new one, and what the storyline will be. It will obviously become smaller. It will probably have one of these villains that's smaller, right? It doesn't have this big overarching storyline, with the MCU. So we might see a return of like declining Spider-Man movies again, which they'll be forced to reboot. So, well, in any case, we'll see how it goes. Alright, number 9 is Angry Birds Movie 2. It pulled in 4.2 million 3 days and 5.6 million 4 days. Domestic gross is 35 million. Not good, right? And overseas it did a way better, 58 million overseas for a worldwide total of 93 million. The budget is 65 million for this movie, and because the first movie did so well, I think it grossed over 300 million worldwide. They have to make a sequel, and the sequel is like underperforming, not unexpected, but I thought it would perform better because it is a known brand, and they thought they probably broke through the the game that is tied to the game. Like when it opened, the game was far from its peak, the mobile game, and the movie did well, but took a number of years for the sequel to come, and I guess those people who are interested in the game have moved on to other things, and kids grow up and they are pretty fickle, right? So 100 million, almost 100 million worldwide is doing okay, right? But budget is about 65 million, which of course they'll make that back through their streaming arrangements. All right, number 10 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. For 3 days, it pulled in about 4.1 million, and for 4 days, it pulled in 5.4 million. And let's see, domestic gross is 131 million, and let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it pulled in 152 million for a worldwide total of 283 million. But just 90 million. So even though it's dropping out the top 10 here, I think it'll continue to pull in the numbers overseas. Alright, that's the top 10. Let's move on to some of the new releases last weekend. As I said, Don't Let Go. It is a thriller that stars David Oyelowo. It's a kind of he connected with his deceased niece through time, through via cell phone call, right? This movie pulled in about open to 2.4 million for 3 days, and for 4 days 2.9 million. And this is a movie that I thought could do better than it actually did, right? I said sound looks interesting. I said for 3 days it could probably do 10 million, and for 4 days 15 million, but way less than that. It didn't even make the top 10. Reviews are not good for this movie. 41% on the tomato meter. Yeah, just not getting it. And it's opening in less than 1,000 theaters, and nothing says we don't have confidence in this movie. Then no, not opening in that many theaters, and probably not promoting it as well. So that's Don't Let Go. The other kind of a major release in the same weekend, last weekend, is Bennett's War, about a soldier who came back from the war front, and has to take up motorbike racing to save his dad's farm. This one reviews better, 60% on the tomato meter, but it even made less than my 1 million projection for this movie. It opened to 430K for Bennett's War, right? For 3 days, and let's see, for 4 days it for 4 days it's 555, and it's probably not going to improve from there. Nobody cared about Bennett's War, even though it opened in more theaters than Don't Let Go. Oh, one thing I have to say about Don't Let Go is the budget's only 5 million, so it's not losing much money. It'll probably even make a profit once it's all said and done, once it gets through the theaters. Alright, so that's it for the new releases as well as the holdovers. Let's move on to the new movie this weekend, and that is the It Chapter 2. It is the second part to the 2017 movie of the same name, right? I mean, this is Chapter 2, the second part. So the first part focused on the children and their struggles, and the killer clown. And in Chapter 2, the kids are all grown up. They turn into Jessica Chastain. They turn into James McAvoy, Bill Hader, and Bill Skarsgård returns as the killer clown Pennywise, right, and others. So the first movie did really well. It's well reviewed as well. 86% on the tomato meter, opened to 123 million, and went on to gross 327 million domestically and 700 million worldwide. The budget is 35 million. Obviously, with Jessica Chastain, James McAvoy, and others, the budget is going to be up, reportedly around 70 million or so for the sequel, which is still low, right, for a sequel such as this, right, since the first movie did so well. For Chapter 2, it is actually relatively well reviewed, 81% on the tomato meter, so which is about where the first movie is reviewed at. It is the Chapter 2 is open around the same time, right? I think Chapter 1 was open in September 8th or so. This one opened in September 6th. So around after Labor Day weekend. So how will this movie do? I don't think it's going to open as well as the first movie. The first movie opened to 123 million. And Chapter 2 is going to open less, I think, than Chapter 1. So how much less? I'm gonna give it a good round number. I'm gonna give it like 100 million for Chapter 2. Alright, that's it for this week's podcast. Tune in next week to see how I did. Until then, take care. Bye bye.